killing of the elusive Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has much of Israel celebrating. He was considered the architect of the October 7th attack. French-Israeli filmmaker Pierre Rehov, whose latest documentary about October 7th pogroms, features footage of Dr. Yuval Bitton, Yahya Sinwar's dentist at Beersheba prison. Bitton was the first to confirm Sinwar's death based on photos and dental records. Since they had no other way to confirm Sinwar's death right away, soldiers sent pictures of his face and teeth to the Shin Bet, one of Israel's 3 principal intelligence organizations, and they asked Bitton to look at the pictures. Based on his observations, they were able to confirm that Sinwar had died. Pogrom is the only documentary with Bitton talking about his personal experience with Sinwar. Let's watch.
את סנואר הכרתי הרבה שנים, היו לי שיחות רבות איתו. וכקצין מודיעין היו שיחות משמעותיות, גם על האסירים, גם על כוונות של האסירים, בתוך בתי הכלא לבצע מהלכים מסוימים שהוא הוביל אותם. ב-2004 אני הייתי מהרופאים שהבחנו את האירוע המוחי שהיה לו, ופינינו אותו לבית החולים, ובכך גם הצלנו את החיים שלו. אז מי שמגדיר אותו פסיכופת הוא עושה לו הנחה. הוא בעצם אומר, מה שהוא עשה, הוא לא היה מודע למה שהוא עשה. זה בן אדם שחולה בנפשו, לוקה בנפשו. זה לא נכון. סנואר הוא לא פסיכופת. סנואר ידע בדיוק מה הוא עושה. זה חלק מתפיסת העולם שלהם. זה חלק מתפיסת העולם של האחים המוסלמים. זה חלק מהג'יהאד כנגד היהודים, שמבחינתם אין לנו זכות קיום פה.
معنويات الشباب ابو باده في حدا
Here with us today is filmmaker Pierre Rehov, whose film is now streaming on Apple. Thank you so much, Pierre, for joining us. This is a fascinating angle to this larger story and, of course, the larger history between Israel and Palestine. He was saved by an IDF leader, Britain, in 2004 during so much escalation that occurred. Why did they save him to begin with? I think that's the biggest question I have learning about this story.
Well, first of all, Hamas pretends to represent the Palestinian people, and they do not. They do not represent the Palestinian people. It's a kind of a gang which has been installed within the Palestinian society. And as soon as they took over the Gaza Strip, as you know, Israel was occupying or present in the Gaza Strip until 2006, and we withdrew from there. All the Jews living in Gaza left, and we gave Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, hoping that it would be the first step for real peace. 1 year later, they voted for Hamas. Hamas took over, and since then, Israel has been, rained with rockets. I mean, we receive rockets basically every single month for years. We are talking of thousands and thousands of rockets, and without the Iron Dome, which is a anti-rocket that Israel developed, hundreds of thousands of people would be just dead inside Israel. This is what they want. This is not a liberation army. This is a terrorist group that took over Gaza, that took over most of the Palestinian territories, and are convincing their people to hate the Jews. Before the Oslo process and before Yasser Arafat took over Judea Samaria, but is also called the West Bank, and took over Gaza, the situation with the Palestinians was in many ways a little better, because at least people were interconnecting. The Israelis would go to the market in Gaza or to Jenin, and people who knew each other. But at a certain point, all the borders were kind of closed because Yasser Arafat started terror attacks non-stop on Israel, and then Hamas took over. So this is really enshrined in a mentality. This is enshrined in a very, very dark kind of spirituality that they have, and this brainwashing that they conduct to their population leads them to believe that Jews are nothing but monsters, and they can do to us what they did on October 7th.
Can I just follow up real quick, though? Because what I don't understand is why an IDF soldier would have saved the leader of Hamas at the time when they had an opportunity to take him. It just seems very bizarre, especially in line with Netanyahu's relationship in propping up Hamas 25 years ago as well.
Yes. Well, again, nothing is simple in the Middle East. And the reason why Israeli soldiers did not take out Sinwar in the last few months, even though they knew a few times where he was, is because by then he was surrounded by hostages that he took as human shields. So each time they knew more or less where he was, the Israeli army didn't want to take him out. Lately, and this is amazing what just happened 2 days ago, because they didn't know who was in the house. They knew there were terrorists, and they started shooting at the terrorists and eventually being shot back. It was, not even real professional. They were just trainees. The trainees killed Sinwar. It's very amazing what happened. And Sinwar was on his way out. He was no longer in the tunnel. He was no longer surrounded by hostages. He had a few passports with him. He had a lot of cash on him. He was trying to escape. That's how Israel got him. Now, if you're talking about the relationship between Netanyahu and the Hamas, there have been a lot of things being said about that, because Netanyahu really believed that on the long term, eventually Hamas will be more interested in not making peace with Israel, but at least taking care of their own people, establishing a kind of system where the people could have jobs, could have a normal life. And lately, what happened is that, the Hamas were asking more and more work permits for Palestinians to come inside Israel. So the government genuinely believed that Hamas was going in that good direction of not being a terror organization anymore. That's happened with the Fatah of Yasser Arafat. They came from being the Fatah to being the Palestinian Authority, an improvement in a way. And this is what Israel was hoping with the Hamas, that being in charge of their people, they would maybe at a certain point take charge of their people. But instead, they stole up the money, they stole up the goods, they built 500 kilometers of tunnels, and they did what they did. And this is unfortunate, but at this point, the future will let us know what is going to happen after Sinwar's death. And everybody hopes it will be the beginning, and as Bibi Netanyahu said, maybe the beginning of the end of the war.
Yeah, to follow up on that, what does happen next? I mean, from your reporting, what do you think happened specifically to Hamas without Sinwar? Was he involved enough as a leader that this could potentially cripple their operations? And do you think that this could lead to more hostages being released?
Sinwar was not alone, but you have to remember that a lot of his companions, or the people working with him, like Mohammed Deif, for instance, were already killed by Israel. He was the highest level leader of Hamas. Ismail Haniyeh also has been eliminated in Tehran, as you know. And Sinwar was the architect of October 7th, so it was the most wanted man in Israel. Now that he's gone, unfortunately, I heard a few minutes ago that his successor, I don't know his name yet, but his successor already made a claim that Hamas will not give up, will not negotiate with Israel, will never give back the hostages, and the war continues. So we are dealing with people who are totally, first, number one, brainwashed, but also they are extremists. You cannot deal with people who believe they are the hand of God and that their mission is to kill everybody who doesn't believe like them. This is the problem we have with Hamas. So the solution on the long term would be to have many Arab countries like the Emirates, maybe Saudi Arabia, all those Arab countries who could put a little bit of pressure on the Palestinians and establish a kind of order within Gaza, which will allow eventually the Palestinians to lead a normal life and to have a future, the future that they deserve. Unfortunately, many people in the world see the situation black and white. Bad Israelis, poor Palestinians. It's not exactly like that. There is obviously people who suffer in both sides, and Palestinians suffer as well. But the problem doesn't come from Israel. In 1948, the Palestinians didn't want a state. In 2000, Arafat didn't want a state. In 2008, Mahmoud Abbas didn't want a state. Each time, the purpose of everything they are doing is to destroy the state of Israel and to take over. It's a whole strategy. So at this point, since Israel was so strong in the last few months, there might be a hope to make them understand and believe but they can have a future without the destruction of Israel. And this would be great.
Well, I think there's definitely much more to this, in that, of course, Hamas is a very bad organization, and Netanyahu has been egregious in his actions so much that the United States has even threatened to sanction Israel for not distributing aid. That came out this week. But I'm very curious, what do you want?
This is a lie, right?
People,
you know that this is a lie.
The State Department did a press conference yesterday about it. But I'm wondering, what do you want to come out of this film? What are you hoping folks learn from this very specific story of the dentist who saved, the doctor who saved Sinwar's life over 20 years ago?
Many films have been made about October 7, and all the films are mostly involving the victims of October 7 and a lot of sad stories. I wanted to make a film which goes a little further the immediate emotion of the massacre and try to explain the real historical context. Because when on October 7, 2023, you have 6,000 civilians following 2,000 or 3,000 militants of Hamas and other terror organizations invading Israel and massacring, raping, burning children alive, torturing, taking hostages and all that, we would expect that the next day the whole world would be on the side of Israel. But the next day in the American universities and all around Europe, you see kids, students, going down the alleys with the signs, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So this was a little bit hard for us in Israel to accept that even when we are massacred, they continue with the same propaganda, which is, by the way, financed by Qatar. They spend an equivalent of $1,000 billion every year in changing the mentality of Americans. So I wanted to make this film to show that October 7 happened in a special context, but it was not the context of the oppression of the Palestinians, because Israel does not exactly oppress the Palestinians. If tomorrow there is a possibility of peace with anybody, we would be so happy to go back to the times where we could go to the market in Gaza, to the market in Jenin, and where everybody would be happy with each other. Everything happened because of people like Yasser Arafat, people like Sinwar. Those people are Islamists, they are fundamentalists, there is nothing to do with those people, and thankfully they are disappearing one after the other, so maybe it might be people, and usually when it's a people facing the other people, there is a solution for peace. Get rid of the leaders.
Pierre, thank you so much for joining us today on Rising. We appreciate it, and we hope people will check out your film.
My pleasure to be with you.